Hey everybody, this is Sheets, and I guess welcome back from the All-Star break. Um, I'm going to be doing a breakdown of today's pretty big slate leading into the weekend, and Bobby's probably going to be back either later today for live or certainly next week. Again, he had some issues he had to handle, and I'm going to be handling this particular slate, and I'm going to be doing it the way I usually do it when I do the solo breakdowns. And instead of going game by game, I'm going to be doing an overall kind of top-down look at the pitchers and then the stacks, and then seeing, maybe good ways to pair some pitchers with stacks and what could be low owned and all that stuff. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be working off of my sheets, which for those of you that are watching this for the first time, is kind of my collection of projections and analysis of them throughout the industry. I take a lot of care of, compiling this data and tweaking it, and, giving you guys at least a baseline of a projection model to use for your builds. Now, again, baseball is, probably the least sensitive to projections of all the sports, but pitchers, it makes a difference with pitchers to have good projections, and it certainly does make a difference to have good projections for hitting. But realize that when you're playing GPPs in baseball, I mean, you're almost never going to hit the actual median. You're going to have to pick, lineups with high upside and things like that. And if you just rely on projections for baseball, you're going to be kind of in a world of trouble. But you do have to start somewhere. So I am going to be working off of my sheets, which are usually only available for premium members, because I have my laptop here and I can't go back and forth between the slate look and the projection look. I'm going to stick with this one and give you guys kind of a free look at this. But in general, if you want access to these numbers and these projections and this type of analysis, you're going to have to be a premium subscriber to TrueDFS.com. In any case, today's a pretty big slate, and as you can see, well, maybe as you can't see, as far as pitchers go, there are three pitchers that kind of stand out among the others when you rate them by what I call my sheets value score, which is kind of a combination of points per dollar and raw points. And that's what I've done. I've kind of ranked them in that form, and that's kind of the default ranking when you access them on TrueDFS as well. And you'll see that Morton, Burns, and Scherzer are all, they're at the top of the list. And I guess there's not that much difference between Morton and Burns, and then there's a little bit of a drop down to Scherzer. But as you'll see, the projected ownership of Scherzer is going to be probably lower than Burns, so I think that kind of evens out. So I would say that these three guys, Morton, Burns, and Scherzer, are at the top of the list with respect to what pitchers, are the best plays. Now, again, just because they're the best plays doesn't mean you have to play them, right? This is a lineup game, not an individual play game. So we'll see how these guys pair with potential stacks and things like that. When you go down a little bit further and farther rankings go, you do have a couple of decent options here where you can save money. Ohtani at 9K, he rates a little bit worse, but it's not that much worse, and you're getting an ownership discount on him. And then you have two kind of cheapos. You have Spencer Howard and Kyle Gibson. And what's neat about them is you're getting almost no ownership out of that. So if you want to play either of those guys, Spencer Howard or Kyle Gibson, that certainly makes some sense. And then you could also, the next group is not bad either. Giolito, Gallen, and Irvin. Listen, they rate below these other guys, but their ownership, you're going to get a significant discount there. You're going to get a lot of leverage against other lineups if you play these guys. So I feel as though if you're going to play multiple lineups, I think you should probably spread out your pitching exposure here. And all of these guys kind of make sense. So again, at the top, Morton, Burns, and Scherzer, but I would not be afraid to go down to Ohtani, Howard, Gibson, and these other two, Giolito, Gallen, and even Irvin. I think it's a slate where you can really screw around. I'm not going to get to Gausman, but if he's really going to be 2% or something like that, just think about it. But I got to stop somewhere. So I'm going to probably cut off my pitchers, at least those top 8 or something like that. And that's pretty much the deal. Let's take a look at the stacks. And then after we do that, I want to do some builds and see kind of what we get here. So again, when we look at the stacks, I rate them in 3 different ways. One is by raw points, which is here on the left. One would be by value stack, and value stack is basically just points per dollar. And then the other is based on modified stack. And when you rate them based on modified stack, you're really taking into account that sheet's value score. Now, again, depending on what site you're looking at, what we do with DraftKings is we list the top 5-man stack for each ranking, I guess ranking system. And when we have FanDuel up, we're going to obviously only rate the stacks with the top 4 players because you can only play 4-man stack. So let's take a look and see how these rate using the different metrics. So if you're rating them just by raw points, you have the Yankees as a little bit better than Toronto and Philly, but not by that much. And then you're dropping down to Houston would be the next one. And then after that, no, I'm sorry, you have Philly, sorry. Then you have Houston just after that. And then you have this kind of glut like Milwaukee, Boston, and then you're down to Kansas City and Tampa. But one thing I am noticing is there's not that big of a difference. Sometimes when you have a team that's a standout, you'll have their raw stack projection be maybe 7 or 8 points higher than the next one. Here, you have a very smooth kind of dispersion of the rankings here, which means that you can really be a stickler for ownership. Like, for example, if you're just rating them by raw, I would then go to ownership and see who's low owned of this group. And Milwaukee, they look pretty good. Tampa, even the White Sox, look at the White Sox, extremely low ownership. So if you can get to them, you're going to get a good raw projection in addition to having low ownership. So that's that. If you rate these teams by just pure value, you're going to get more cheapos, right? So you're going to get Arizona, Miami, San Francisco, Cleveland. These are the 4 teams that are kind of up there. And then the next group is then you're down to Kansas City, kind of almost on their own or whatever. So when you're just going to rate by value, you have Arizona, Miami, San Francisco, Cleveland, KC. And then when you rate them by modified stacks, it's pretty similar to regular value. So again, Arizona, Miami, San Francisco, KC, and Tampa. Okay. So the question that a lot of people ask me is, which ranking matters the most? And the reality is that, it depends on what pitchers you're using, right? Like if you want to make a priority using those top tier pitchers like Burns and Scherzer, you're not going to be able to afford those raw stacks anyway. So you're going to probably have to then, play like Arizona, Miami, San Francisco, Kansas City. That's, as I mentioned. Or if you want to pay down for pitching a little bit, then you could then get to some of those, I don't know, then you can get down to some of those higher tier stacks. So what I like to do next is then look at the ownership of these value stacks. So Arizona is probably on the chalkier side, right? But if you look down here, San Francisco is actually pretty good. So San Francisco is rates very similarly to Arizona and Miami, but their ownership is much lower. So, and then look at Kansas City. Kansas City rates pretty close as well to Arizona and Miami, yet their ownership is lower. So if I were going to identify the teams that I would, highlight in GPPs, I would say that for value, I would say San Francisco and KC, right? Because remember, we're talking about trying to find a team that ranks well on a value scale and is not as highly owned. So San Francisco and KC would be my choices there. And then once again, if we were doing just raw, it would probably be, I'm just taking the lowest owned of these. That'd be Philly, Milwaukee, and yeah, I guess Philly and Milwaukee would be my top. So if you ask me who my favorite stacks are, I guess those would be it. Philly, Milwaukee, San Francisco, and Kansas City, was it? Yeah. So Philly, Milwaukee, San Francisco, Kansas City. So if I were hand building, that's probably what I would do. I would make sure to play those 4 sets of stacks. And depending on, which one I use, that determine where I have to go pitching wise. If I want to play with, if I want to play Philly or Milwaukee, probably going to have to pay down for pitching a little bit. If you want to play Kansas City or San Francisco, then maybe we can get away with paying up for pitching a little bit. So that's the way I kind of look at it from a hand build perspective. But let me try to see what happens if I input all of the stuff that I just mentioned into SaberSim, right? And see what kinds of lineups I would get built, just presuming that we use my projections. Now, this is what's really, in a way, kind of cool about baseball is that, and really cool about using SaberSim is who you think you'll end up with might not necessarily be who you do end up with. And I'll give you an example. Now, I haven't even done this yet, but let's see. Here are the projections. Here are the projections. I already preloaded them in. And you could do that again if you're a TrueDFS/SaberSim member. It can automatically pull your projections in here. But then what you could do is then let's build 150 lines. Let's build 150 lineups. We're going to do 150 max settings, and we're going to build them and see what kind of lineups we get using my projections, but then letting SaberSim kind of construct them for you. And again, what SaberSim does for you is it creates high upside lineups. It correlates them right for you. It takes into account ownership fade and all that. So I'm just curious if I'm going to get, if I use SaberSim to build the lineups, the same types of things that I just theorized I was going to get. I was just kind of eyeballing my numbers and thought that, okay, I was going to get some Philly, Milwaukee, KC, and San Francisco. But let's see what SaberSim gets me. And here comes the suspense. And I don't mind showing this because it's, everything's going to change between now and the end of the day anyway. All right, so let's take a look. Let's see. So first of all, pitching wise, I would end up with 75% Burns, and then Morton and Scherzer. Then let's take a look at the teams stacks. Yeah, I would have 21% Kansas City. That would be my highest owned. And yeah, I would get Philly. And remember, Tampa was just on the outside looking in when I did the analysis. So that certainly makes a lot of sense. So interesting that I'm not getting any San Francisco, but Kansas City looks to be, the way to go. I'm getting the most of them in 150. I'm getting to them when I'm looking at them from a hand built perspective. So Kansas City is pretty strong. And I see Philly up there as well. So this is exactly the type of, by the way, you talk about process. This is exactly the process I go through when I build my lineups. I look at my projections. I look at what I would do hand built wise, and I run it from SaberSim, and then I see where it matches up, see if I want to make any tweaks or anything like that. And then usually what I'll do is when I do our live stream, I'll get that last minute news, those last minute takes from Bobby that, I respect so much, and I'll kind of tweak this way, but that's pretty much it. All right, so I guess that's it for the Slate summary. I don't know if I'm gonna be around at 6 o'clock to do the live stream. And I don't know if Bobby's gonna be there either, but hopefully this gave you an idea of what I would do for today and a little insight into some of the TrueDFS tools. And that'll do it. Good luck, everybody, and have a good weekend.